What happens when the calm, composed atmosphere of daytime television suddenly cracks? When a conversation meant to entertain turns into something no one in the studio, or watching at home, was prepared for. It begins like any other morning. Bright lights flood the stage. The audience claps on cue, a wave of polite excitement rolling through the studio as the hosts take their seats. Smiles, coffee mugs, casual laughter. The rhythm is familiar, almost comforting. And then she walks out. Gal Gadot. Poised, elegant, unshaken. There's a quiet power in the way she carries herself, the kind that doesn't demand attention, but commands it anyway. The audience reacts instantly, applause swelling louder than usual. Some stand, some cheer. She smiles, warm but measured, waving as she takes her seat. Whoopi Goldberg leans forward slightly, her expression curious, welcoming but observant. There's always that sharp awareness behind her eyes. "Well," Whoopi says, her voice cutting gently through the applause. "Look at you. You walked in here like you own the place." The audience laughs. Gal smiles. "Maybe just for today," Gal replies lightly. The tension isn't there yet. Not fully, but something subtle lingers beneath the surface. A shift too small to name, but impossible to ignore if you're paying close attention. And if you're watching this right now, you are. Before we go further, if you love moments like this, the kind that feel real, raw, and impossible to look away from, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, hit that like button, and drop a comment. Because what you're about to witness only gets more intense from here. The conversation begins easily enough. Whoopi starts with the usual questions: upcoming projects, life updates, the balance between fame and privacy. Gal answers smoothly, gracefully, her voice calm and controlled. She's done this 100 times before. But today, something is different. Joy Behar jumps in, her tone sharper, more probing. "You've been in the spotlight a lot lately," she says, tilting her head. "Not just for your films, but for your opinions." The audience quiets slightly. Gal nods. "That comes with the territory." "Does it?" Joy presses. "Or do you think celebrities sometimes invite that kind of attention?" A pause. Not long. Just enough. Gal's smile doesn't disappear, but it changes. Subtly. The warmth cools, replaced by something more deliberate. "I think," she begins carefully, "that when you have a voice, people expect you to use it. And when you do, not everyone will like what you say." There's a ripple through the audience. A shift in posture. A few murmurs. Whoopi watches closely now. Her fingers rest against her chin, eyes narrowing just slightly, not in hostility, but in focus. "And that doesn't bother you?" Whoopi asks. Gal meets her gaze directly. "It depends," she says, "on whether the conversation is fair." There it is. The first crack. It's small, almost invisible, but it changes everything. Joy leans forward again. "So you think the conversations around you haven't been fair?" Gal exhales slowly. "I think sometimes people decide what you mean before you've even finished speaking." A few audience members clap. Not loudly, but enough. Whoopi raises an eyebrow. "That's not new," she says. "That's been happening forever, especially on shows like this." There's a hint of challenge in her voice now. And Gal hears it. "I know," Gal replies. "But knowing something happens doesn't mean you have to accept it." The audience reacts more strongly this time. A louder murmur. A few more claps. Someone says, "That's right," under their breath. The energy is shifting. You can feel it now. The easy, predictable rhythm of the show is gone. In its place, something sharper. More unpredictable. Like standing on the edge of a storm you didn't see coming. Whoopi leans back slightly, studying Gal. "So what are you saying?" she asks. "That we're being unfair right now?" The room goes still. This is the moment. The one where most guests would laugh it off. Deflect. Smooth things over. But Gal doesn't. She holds Whoopi's gaze. Calm. Steady. Unflinching. "I'm saying," she replies slowly, "that sometimes the way questions are asked already contains the answer you expect." A collective inhale sweeps through the audience. Joy sits back, clearly taken aback for a split second before recovering. "Well, that's called having an opinion," she shoots back. "And that's okay," Gal says quickly. "But there's a difference between having an opinion and creating a narrative." Now the tension is undeniable. Whoopi's expression tightens, not angry but engaged. Fully present. The kind of presence that signals this is no longer just an interview. "This is what we do," Whoopi says, her voice firm but controlled. "We ask questions. We challenge people. That's the job. And I respect that, Gal replies. I really do. But respect has to go both ways. Silence. Not awkward. Electric. The audience doesn't know whether to clap, laugh, or just watch. So they watch. Every movement now feels amplified. Every word carries weight. Whoopi leans forward again, elbows on the table. So you think we're not respecting you? Gal pauses. And for the first time, you see it. Not hesitation, but decision. No, she says. I think sometimes the conversation becomes less about understanding and more about proving a point. The words land like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples spread instantly. Joy opens her mouth to respond, but Whoopi raises a hand slightly, stopping her. She's locked in now, focused entirely on Gal. And what point do you think we're trying to prove? Whoopi asks. Gal's voice softens, but somehow becomes even stronger. That certain voices are easier to question than others. The audience reacts, louder this time. A mix of applause and murmurs. Some people nod. Others glance at each other, unsure. Whoopi doesn't react immediately. She just watches, measuring, calculating, and then she speaks. You came here knowing what this show is, she says. We don't tiptoe around things. I didn't ask you to, Gal replies. A beat. Another. But I also didn't come here to be misunderstood. That line hangs in the air. Heavy. Unavoidable. And suddenly, what started as a routine interview has become something else entirely. A confrontation. Not loud. Not explosive. But controlled. Intentional. Real. The kind that makes people lean closer to their screens without realizing it. Whoopi exhales slowly, her expression shifting. Not softer, but more complex. Then help us understand, she says. And just like that, the battle lines are drawn. But this is only the beginning. The air doesn't settle after that. It tightens. You can feel it pressing in from every direction. The lights hotter now, the silence heavier, the audience no longer just spectators but witnesses to something unfolding in real time. Gal Gadot doesn't rush to fill the space. She lets it breathe. Lets the weight of what she just said linger long enough that no one in the room can pretend it didn't land. Whoopi Goldberg watches her closely, the faintest shift in her posture signaling something deeper than casual disagreement. This isn't surface level anymore. This is instinct meeting instinct. All right, Whoopi says finally, her voice calm but edged with something firmer. Then go ahead. Help us understand. It sounds like an invitation, but it feels like a test. Gal nods once, almost imperceptibly. She folds her hands in front of her. Not defensive, not closed off, but grounded. When I speak about something important to me, she begins, her tone measured, I'm not expecting everyone to agree. That's not realistic. But I do expect that people listen to what I'm actually saying, not what they think I represent. A murmur ripples through the audience again. Quieter this time, more thoughtful. Joy Behar leans forward, her eyes narrowing slightly. But you do represent something, she says. Whether you like it or not. You're a global figure. People project onto that. Gal turns her head slightly toward Joy, acknowledging her without breaking composure. I understand that, she replies. But projection isn't truth. Joy exhales sharply through her nose. It's perception, she counters. And perception matters. And so does responsibility, Gal says, her voice still calm. But now there's steel beneath it. From both sides, that lands differently. The audience reacts, not loudly, but with a kind of collective awareness. Like they're realizing this isn't just about one interview anymore. This is about something bigger. Whoopi shifts in her seat, leaning forward again. So what responsibility are you putting on us? She asks. Because from where I'm sitting, we're doing what we always do, asking questions people at home are already asking. Gal meets her gaze again, unwavering. Then ask them, she says. But don't decide the answer before I speak. The words are simple, but they hit hard. A few audience members clap, hesitantly at first, then more confidently. Others stay silent, watching the exchange with intense focus. Joy shakes her head slightly, half smiling but not amused. You're saying we're biased. I'm saying, Gal replies, that sometimes the framing of a question creates a conclusion. Whoopi tilts her head, considering that. That's how conversations work, she says. We challenge. We push. And I'm okay with being challenged, Gal says quickly. But there's a difference between challenge and assumption. That word, assumption, hangs in the air like a spark. Joy leans back now, crossing her arms slightly. Give me an example, she says. Because right now, this sounds very general. There's a subtle shift in the audience again. They're leaning in, sensing something more concrete is coming. Gal takes a breath. And for the first time, there's a flicker of something deeper behind her composure. Not anger, not frustration exactly, but conviction. When I've spoken about issues that matter to me, she begins, I've seen headlines, interviews, discussions where my words are shortened, reshaped, or placed next to opinions I never expressed. She pauses, letting that sink in. And then I'm asked to respond to that version of myself, she continues. A version I don't recognize. The room is quiet. Not just silent, listening. Whoopi doesn't interrupt this time. Joy doesn't either. Gal leans forward slightly now, just enough to shift the energy again. That's what I mean by fairness, she says. Not agreement. Not approval. Just accuracy. A few audience members nod visibly. Someone whispers, that's fair, under their breath. Whoopi exhales slowly, her fingers tapping lightly against the table. You know, she says, this isn't new. Public figures have been dealing with this forever. I know, Gal replies. But that doesn't mean it should stay that way. There's no defiance in her tone. Just certainty. And somehow, that makes it hit even harder. Joy leans in again, sharper this time. So what, you want media to just soften everything? No hard questions? No critique? Gal shakes her head immediately. No. I want accountability to go both ways. Joy raises an eyebrow. Accountability from a talk show? From anyone shaping a narrative, Gal says. Including me. That catches them off guard. You can see it. For a split second, the tension shifts. Not gone, but redirected. Whoopi notices it too. So you're saying you hold yourself accountable? She asks. Yes, Gal answers without hesitation. And I'm open to being questioned. But I won't accept being misrepresented. The audience responds again, this time louder. Applause breaks out, scattered but growing. The energy is no longer uncertain. It's divided. And that's what makes it powerful. Whoopi leans back slightly, folding her hands now. Her expression is thoughtful, but there's still an edge there. You're pushing back, she says. Live. On a show where people don't usually do that. Gal's lips curve into a faint, controlled smile. Maybe they should. That line lands like a spark in dry air. A louder reaction from the audience this time. Some applause, some surprised laughter, a few audible, oh, sounds echoing across the studio. Joy lets out a short laugh, shaking her head. All right, she says. So now we're the problem. No, Gal says calmly. You're part of the conversation. And you're not. Joy fires back. I am, Gal says. That's why I'm here. There's a beat. A long one. The kind where no one speaks because everyone knows something just shifted again. Whoopi leans forward one more time, her voice quieter now, but somehow more intense. You knew this wouldn't be easy, she says. Gal nods. Yes. And you came anyway. Yes. Why? The question cuts through everything. No sarcasm. No challenge. Just direct. Gal pauses. Not because she doesn't have an answer, but because she knows this is the moment that defines everything that comes next. I came, she says slowly, because conversations like this matter, even when they're uncomfortable. The audience is completely still now. No murmurs. No whispers. Just attention. Especially when they're uncomfortable, Gal adds. Whoopi watches her for a long second. And then, just barely, she nods. Not agreement. Not concession. But recognition. And that changes the tone again. Not softer, but deeper. Because now this isn't just tension. It's something more dangerous. Mutual understanding on the edge of conflict. Joy breaks the silence, her voice lighter. But the sharpness hasn't disappeared. Well, she says, you definitely got your uncomfortable conversation. A few scattered laughs ripple through the audience. Gal allows a small smile. So did you. That earns a stronger reaction. Applause, a few cheers, even some surprised laughter. The balance of the room shifts again. Back and forth. Like a pendulum that refuses to settle. But beneath it all, something is building. Something bigger than a disagreement. Because now, it's not just about what's being said. It's about what's about to be said next. And everyone in that studio can feel it. The moment hasn't exploded yet. But it's getting closer. Closer than anyone expected. Something changes after that. Not in the words, but in the space between them. The energy in the studio no longer feels like a back and forth. It feels like a line has been drawn, and everyone, from the hosts to the audience, is aware they're standing right on top of it. No one leans back anymore. No one relaxes. Even the cameras seem closer somehow, tight on faces, catching every flicker of emotion, every breath that comes a second too late. Whoopi Goldberg sits still for a moment, her hands folded, her expression unreadable. But there's a shift in her eyes now, less resistance, more calculation. She's not just reacting anymore. She's choosing her next move. You know what's interesting, she says slowly, her voice quieter than before, but carrying further somehow. Most people who sit where you're sitting, they try to smooth things out. Keep it light. Make sure everyone leaves comfortable. A pause. But you didn't do that. Gal Gadot doesn't look away. No, she says simply. The honesty of it lands harder than anything else she could have said. A ripple moves through the audience, not applause this time, not laughter. Just awareness. The kind that settles deep in your chest when you realize something real is happening. Joy Behar exhales, leaning forward again, elbows on the table now. All right, she says, her tone sharper, more direct. Let's stop circling around it then. There it is. The shift from tension to confrontation. You're saying you've been misrepresented, Joy continues. That people twist what you say. Fine. That happens. But what about when people understand you exactly the way you spoke, and they still disagree? Gal turns slightly toward her posture still composed, but her focus sharper now. Then we have a disagreement, she says. And that's okay. Joy tilts her head. But you don't seem okay with it. I'm not okay with being reduced, Gal replies. That word, reduced, cuts through the air like a blade. Joy's eyes narrow slightly. Reduced how? Gal takes a breath, and this time she doesn't soften it. Reduced to headlines, to assumptions, to simplified versions of complex thoughts, she says. Reduced to something easier to debate, but not actually true. The audience reacts again, this time more divided. Some clap immediately. Others hesitate. A few shift in their seats, unsure. Whoopi leans forward, her voice steady but firmer now. But that's the reality of public life, she says. You don't get full control over how people interpret you. I'm not asking for control, Gal responds. I'm asking for responsibility. The word comes back again. Stronger now. More defined. Joy lets out a small, incredulous laugh. Responsibility from the media, from talk shows, from audiences, from everyone except you? Gal's expression tightens, just slightly. From me too, she says. Always from me. That's what I've been saying. But you keep pointing outward, Joy presses. At the narrative, at the framing, at the system. At some point, don't you have to accept that maybe the reaction is coming from what you said? There it is. The moment the conversation tips. The question isn't just a question anymore. It's a challenge. The audience feels it instantly. There's a collective shift, a tightening, a sense that this is the line you don't cross unless you're ready for what comes next. Gal doesn't answer immediately. Not because she's unsure, but because she's choosing how much of herself to reveal. When she finally speaks, her voice is different. Still calm, but deeper, more personal. I have asked myself that, she says. Many times. The room quiets again. Even Joy pauses, just for a second. And sometimes, Gal continues, the answer is yes. Sometimes I could have said things better. More clearly. More carefully. That admission lands unexpectedly. It softens something in the room, but only for a moment. Then why push back so hard? Joy asks. Why not just accept it and move on? Gal's eyes lift slightly, not away, but beyond, like she's seeing something bigger than the table in front of her. Because moving on doesn't fix the pattern, she says. The audience leans in again. And now you can feel it. This isn't about one interview. This isn't even about one person. This is about something that's been building long before this moment, and is finally being said out loud. Whoopi watches her carefully. So what pattern are you talking about? She asks. Gal looks back at her. And this time, there's no hesitation at all. The pattern where certain voices are constantly questioned more aggressively, she says. Where nuance is lost faster. Where intention is doubted before it's understood. The words are precise, measured, but they land like thunder. The audience reacts, louder now. Some clap immediately. Others look around, gauging the room. A few shake their heads, already forming counterarguments. Joy leans back, crossing her arms again. And you think you're one of those voices? Gal holds her gaze. Yes. No explanation. No softening. Just certainty. That's what makes it explosive. Joy lets out a breath, half laughing, half incredulous. That's a strong claim. It's an honest one, Gal replies. Whoopi shifts again, her expression tightening. Not in anger, but in intensity. You're walking into complicated territory, she says. I know, Gal answers. And you're doing it on live television. Yes. Why now? The question echoes differently this time. Less like curiosity, more like a warning. Gal pauses. And for the first time, the emotion behind her composure becomes visible. Not overwhelming, not uncontrolled, but real. Because staying silent is also a choice, she says. And I've done that before. The room stills. Completely. And what did that get you? Joy asks, quieter now. Gal's answer comes without delay. Misunderstood anyway. That line hits harder than anything else she's said. Because it doesn't feel like an argument. It feels like truth. The audience reacts in a wave, applause, murmurs, even a few people standing slightly before sitting back down, unsure if this is the moment to fully commit. Whoopi doesn't react outwardly, but something in her expression shifts. Just slightly. Enough to notice. Enough to matter. You're not wrong, she says slowly. The words hang in the air. Unexpected. Powerful. Joy turns toward her, surprised. Wait, but Whoopi raises a hand again, stopping her. I didn't say I agree with everything, Whoopi continues. But I hear what you're saying. That changes everything. Because now it's no longer two sides clashing. It's something more complex. More dangerous. Understanding, without resolution. Gal nods once, acknowledging it. That's all I'm asking for, she says. But Joy isn't done. Not even close. She leans forward again, sharper than before. All right, she says. Then let me ask you this. If you know how this works, if you know how media operates, if you know your words will be taken apart and debated, why say things that can be misunderstood in the first place? The question lands like a final push. The kind that forces a definitive answer. The kind that decides everything. The audience holds its breath. Gal doesn't. She leans forward slightly, meeting Joy's intensity head-on. Because silence is easier to control, she says. But it doesn't change anything. A beat. And I'm not here to be easy. That's it. That's the moment. The one where the tension finally peaks. Not in shouting, not in chaos, but in clarity. The audience erupts. Applause, loud, sustained, impossible to ignore. Some stand. Some cheer. Others remain seated, arms crossed, still processing what they've just witnessed. Whoopi watches it all, her expression unreadable again, but her eyes sharper than ever. Joy leans back slowly, shaking her head, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Well, she says under her breath, just loud enough to be heard, you got your moment. Gal doesn't respond immediately. She doesn't need to, because everyone in that room, and everyone watching at home, already knows. This isn't just a moment anymore. It's something people are going to talk about long after the cameras stop rolling. And the cameras are still rolling. And still the cameras keep rolling. But something has shifted in a way no one can rewind. The applause doesn't fade the way it usually does. It lingers, uneven, layered, almost divided. Some people clap harder, standing now without hesitation. Others stay seated, arms folded, watching with expressions that range from impressed to unsettled. This isn't a clean ending. This is the kind of moment that refuses to resolve. Whoopi Goldberg sits back slowly, her fingers tapping once against the table before going still. Her face carries that familiar composure, but now it's carrying something else too. Recognition. Not agreement. Not defeat. But recognition. Well, she says finally, her voice steady but quieter than before, this is definitely not the interview we started with. A ripple of nervous laughter moves through the audience. Gal Gadot exhales softly, the tension in her shoulders easing just slightly, but not disappearing. Conversations rarely stay where they start, she says. There's no edge in her voice now. Just truth. Joy Behar shakes her head again, but this time there's less resistance in it. More disbelief. More reflection. I'll give you this, Joy says. You didn't come here to play it safe. Gal allows a small smile. No, she says. I didn't. Another pause settles over the table. But it's not the same silence as before. This one feels different. Less like pressure. More like aftermath. Whoopi leans forward again, resting her arms on the table, her gaze steady on Gal. You know people are going to have opinions about this, she says. Gal nods. They already do. And not all of them are going to be kind. I don't expect them to be. That honesty lands in a quieter way now, less explosive but deeper. The kind that sinks in slowly. Joy glances out toward the audience, then back at Gal. So what happens after this? She asks. When the clips start circulating, when the headlines hit, when everyone starts picking sides, what then? That question hangs heavier than any before it. Because now, it's not about the moment. It's about what comes next. Gal takes a breath, her eyes briefly scanning the audience. People leaning forward, some still holding on to that charged energy, others already processing, already forming their own conclusions. When people talk, she says slowly, they reveal what they heard and what they didn't. The room goes quiet again. And that matters, she continues, because it shows us where the real conversation still needs to happen. Whoopi watches her for a long second. And then, almost unexpectedly, she nods. Not dramatically. Just enough. I can respect that, she says. It's a small moment, but it carries weight. Joy looks between them, then lets out a soft breath. Well, she says, I guess we just gave people a lot to talk about. That earns a light reaction from the audience, some chuckles, a few claps, but nothing like before. Because the energy now isn't about reaction. It's about reflection, the kind that follows something real. Whoopi turns slightly toward the camera, the subtle shift signaling the show is moving toward its close. But even that feels different now, like the usual structure is struggling to reassert itself after what just happened. You came here and said what you needed to say, Whoopi says, turning back to Gal one last time. And whether people agree or not, they heard you. Gal meets her gaze. That's all I wanted. Another pause. Then Whoopi nods once more, this time more decisively. Fair enough. The audience applauds again, but softer, steadier. Not explosive. Respectful. The kind of applause that acknowledges something meaningful, even if it wasn't comfortable. The camera pulls back slightly, widening the frame. But the moment doesn't feel smaller. If anything, it feels bigger now. Because somewhere beyond that studio, beyond the lights and the table and the applause, the conversation has already begun. Clips start spreading within minutes. Short segments. Sharp edits. The most intense lines pulled out and replayed again and again. She didn't come here to be easy. Don't decide the answer before I speak. I'm not here to be misunderstood. Each one becomes a headline. Each one becomes a debate. On social media, the reactions split instantly. Some praise Gal Gadot for standing her ground, calling her composed, articulate, unshaken under pressure. They highlight her calm, the way she never raised her voice, the way she held her position without losing control. Others push back just as strongly, arguing that tough questions are part of the job, that public figures don't get to shape the narrative once it's out there, that accountability cuts both ways. Clips of Whoopi Goldberg circulate too. Her measured responses, her moments of pause, the subtle shift when she said, "You're not wrong." Some call it respect. Others call it restraint. Joy Behar's lines trend as well. Her sharper challenges, her refusal to back down, her insistence on pushing the conversation further. Some viewers applaud her for it. Others say she pushed too hard. And just like that, it becomes bigger than the moment itself. News outlets pick it up. Commentary videos appear within hours. Panels dissect it. Headlines frame it in completely different ways, some calling it a clash, others a powerful exchange, others a rare live pushback. But none of them capture what it felt like in that room. Because what happened wasn't just conflict. It was something more precise, more controlled. Two sides refusing to simplify something complex, and refusing to walk away from it. Back in the studio, as the show wraps and the audience begins to file out, there's still a hum in the air. Conversations starting in hushed voices, people turning to each other asking, "What did you think?" No one leaves indifferent. And that's the difference. Because most interviews are forgotten the moment they end. This one follows people out the door, follows them onto their screens, follows them into conversations hours later. And somewhere in that noise, between the clips, the headlines, the opinions, the original moment still exists. Unedited, unfiltered, real. So now it turns to you. You watched it unfold. You felt the shift. You heard every word. Was Gal Gadot right to push back the way she did? Did she stand her ground or cross a line? And what about Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar? Were they asking the questions that needed to be asked or proving her point? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't one of those moments with a single answer. And if you want more stories like this, raw, intense, impossible to ignore, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, hit that like button, and stay tuned. Because the next moment like this could be even bigger.